Hey guys, real quick little video I'm going to make for you about the difference between what's called developing versus developed countries. It's a really important concept to know in economics. You're also going to be using it a bit in science this year. You'll certainly be looking at this a lot in ninth grade geography next year. So in eighth grade, we kind of introduce it, get you warmed up to the idea. So if we were to overly simplify the difference between developing countries and developed countries, developing countries tend to be very poor. Developed countries are on the wealthier side of things. And I'll show you some ways to determine which is which. I'm going to skip that actually. So developing countries. Last week you learned about GDP and GDP per capita. Remember, GDP per capita kind of tells us roughly how much the average person makes in a country, sort of. It's a good general measurement for how wealthy a country is. So a developing country, you're going to have a real low GDP per capita because there is not that much wealth to go around to all the people. You're going to have a lower literacy rate, which means there's going to be fewer adults that know how to read and write. You're going to have a shorter life expectancy. People just aren't going to live quite as long, and that can be because of lack of proper nutrition. It can be lack of proper health care, things like that. Some other characteristics of developing, they're going to have higher infant mortality rates. You looked at that a little bit last week. So remember, that is the number of babies that die before their first birthday out of every 1,000. So if you have an infant mortality rate of 12, that means for every 1,000 babies born, 12 of them will die before their first birthday. So it's a pretty sad statistic to look at, but it can tell us a lot about the level of development for a country. They have higher poverty rates, which means they're going to have a higher percentage of the population that is very poor. You're going to have higher unemployment. So you're going to have a large chunk of the population that cannot find work. Also, and this is an important one, a lot of the economy, most of the economy is going to be based off primary industries. If you remember learning about that, was that a week or two ago? Primary industries are jobs that gather raw materials. So it could be farmers growing crops. It could be miners digging things out of the ground, fishermen, stuff like that. So all those seven things are things you can look at if trying to determine if a country is developing. So Afghanistan, India, and Madagascar, just three random examples of developing countries. I'll show you a map in a second that will show you how the whole world breaks down. First, developed countries. So these are basically the opposite of what I just talked about. These are going to be countries that have a high GDP per capita, so there's a lot of wealth flowing around. People are going to live longer. You're going to have lower infant mortality rates, which obviously is a good thing. Lower poverty rates, again, because the country's wealthier. Lower unemployment rates. So for the most part, if people want to find jobs, they're probably going to be able to find them, at least hopefully. You're going to have higher education and higher literacy rates because school systems are going to be a bit better. And you're going to have an economy mainly based around the tertiary and quaternary levels of the industry. If you don't remember what those are, tertiary is service-based jobs where you're doing something for someone. And quaternary is where you're educating people or you're doing some kind of research, like scientists or something like that. So the United States, we're a perfect example of a developed country. Canada, the UK, Japan, they're all examples. Here's a world map that will show you. So any of the blue countries are very highly developed. So the United States, Canada, huge chunk of Europe. You got Australia, New Zealand, some of these Asian countries, South Korea, Japan. Yellow countries are kind of the in-between ones. They're almost developed, but not quite. So you got almost all of South America, Mexico, huge swaths of Europe. Some of Africa. The red countries are the least developed, so the most developing. So you mainly find those in Africa. These are going to be countries that are, they can be beautiful, they can have awesome cultures and stuff, but economically they are struggling. So what I'm going to have you guys do next is, ignore that, that's for my in-person kids. You guys are going to be doing a reading that kind of breaks this down a bit further. So I got two different versions of it, honors or regular. Honestly, you could pick either one. They're the same exact article, but just at different reading levels. So challenge yourself with the honors if you like, or just read the general one. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, shoot me a message. I'll be happy to help.